Executive Director Vusumuzi Sifile, who is also joining us this evening. But we also are thankful that you're joining us. So you can post on X using the hashtag #PublicDebateZM, or you can leave a comment on our live feed on Facebook. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dingindaba Jonah Buyoya. I'll be your moderator in this debate, and because I'm moderator, I'd just like to run through some of the very simple rules that we'll observe in this debate. For those that would like to make contributions from the audience, you will make contributions through the moderator, and in that case, that's me. But this also applies to our panel. You're free to add on and weigh in on the thoughts that are shared by any one of the panelists, only if you signal me, and we give the floor to either object or add on. It's as easy as that. And at this point, I'd like for us to begin the show. To start off the show, we take a look at the history of presidential limits in Zambia, why this exists, and in whose interest it is. So here is why we're here.
Since its independence in 1964, Zambia's political landscape has evolved significantly. This is seen especially in the realm of presidential term limits. The journey from a one-party state to a multi-party democracy showcases Zambia's resilience in preserving democratic governance. We delve into the history of presidential term limits in Zambia, a story that has been marked by challenges, reforms, and the unwavering commitment to democratic principles. We cannot talk about the history of presidential term limits without fully understanding what happened prior. Zambia was formerly known as Northern Rhodesia, ruled under the British government. It was only until 1964 that Zambia gained her independence and saw the country having her first president.
And in the past, but we feel that the reward of the honey is now ours to share among our own people. When we look back the path which led to this conference room today, we cannot entirely forget, but we can certainly forgive the days of our imprisonment and the occasions when many of us have been subject to personal indignities and hardship because of our political ideas. These unhappy memories have served only to broaden our minds.
Zambia's first president, Kenneth Kaunda, led the nation to independence on October 24, 1964. His leadership was crucial in shaping the newly independent nation. Initially, the country embraced a multi-party system, but unfortunately, this period was short-lived. In 1972, Zambia was declared a one-party state under UNIP.
By the conscious decision of the people of this nation, Zambia will soon be a one-party participatory democracy. This is why the deliberations of this National Council are so important.
President Kaunda ruled without term limits, consolidating power and remaining in office for 27 years. Economic difficulties and political pressure led to the reintroduction of multi-party democracy. By 1991, economic hardships and political dissatisfaction fueled a significant shift. Zambia transitioned back to a multi-party democracy, marking the end of Kaunda's prolonged presidency. Dr. Frederick Chuluba, leader of the Movement for Multi-Party Democracy, MMD, emerged victorious in 1991, defeating Kaunda in the presidential elections. He then introduced a new constitution in 1991, which instituted a two-term limit for the presidency, with each term being 5 years. This marked the first time term limits were written in Zambia's political system. Zambia's commitment to these term limits was tested in 2001 after serving 2 terms.
And we said Zambia must be on the road back to the state of paradise, the building of a veritable state. And some of you were very doubtful. You wondered how people, as young and small as we look, could bring wonders after a tall old man had failed.
President Chiluba attempted to amend the constitution to allow him to have a third term. This sparked widespread opposition, with civil society, the church, and even members of his own party voicing their resistance. The public outcry was overwhelming, forcing Chiluba to abandon his bid for a third term.
And we said to you, we had an idea, we had a vision. Besides, although we were discussing with you orally, we based our discussions on a written document, which is a social contract with the voters, and we call it a manifesto. This manifesto is the basis of our relationship between you and us, and we shall be held accountable and responsible for all the promises in here, so that if you vote for us and we fail to respond or to bring about the promised development on the basis of this document, then I'm saying you have a duty, you have a right to say to us, but you guys are liars.
After his failure to get a third term, Levi Mwanawasa was chosen as the MMD candidate, and he won the presidency in the subsequent election.
Elected to the office of President of the Republic of Zambia, do swear that I will faithfully and diligently discharge my duties and perform my functions in this high office.
Mwanawasa's presidency was tragically cut short by his death in 2008. This unfortunate occurrence led to then Vice President Rupia Banda completing President Levi Mwanawasa's term.
The people of Zambia, including the people of Terenge, including the people of the Central Province, all the people of Zambia decided who was going to be the government of Zambia until 2011.
Banda won the 2008 election, but was defeated by Michael Sata of the Patriotic Front in 2011.
I stand before you, before the women and men of Zambia, and before our children with humility, with honor, and with hope for our future.
Sata's tenure was also marked by tragedy when he passed away in 2014, leaving Vice President Guy Scott as acting president until new elections could be held. A presidential by-election was held in 2015, and Edgar Chagwa Lungu was elected as president of the Republic of Zambia, and was re-elected in 2016. His rise to power brought further complications to the interpretation of Zambia's term limits. Questions did, however, rise about whether his first partial term should be counted towards a two-term limit. In 2018, Zambia's Constitutional Court ruled that Lungu's first term did not count since it was less than 3 years, allowing him to run again in 2021.
Lungu kariaka 2015 to 2016 temu iyo. So temu ya kwa President Edgar Chagwa Lungu yatampire mu 2016. So Lungu bateka po temu inga emukutira 2021 bale yiminina.
This decision sparked debate, but underscored the complexity of interpreting term limits in a changing political context. The 2021 general election was a landmark event in Zambia's democratic history. Edgar Lungu sought re-election, but was defeated by Hakainde Hichilema of the United Party for National Development, UPND.
I therefore declare the said Hichilema Hakainde S. to be President-elect of the Republic of Zambia. This is 16th day of August 2021.
This peaceful transition of power reinforced Zambia's commitment to respecting presidential term limits and preserving democratic integrity. As of 2024, the two-term limit remains a cornerstone of Zambia's democratic framework. The history of presidential term limits in Zambia reflects the border struggles and successes of African nations in establishing and maintaining democratic governance. The adherence to these limits has played a crucial role in ensuring peaceful transitions of power and stability politically. The debate has, however, once again risen as to whether the presidential term limit should be increased from 5 to 7 years or more.
I, Hakainde, Simachela, having been constitutionally elected to the office of the President of the Republic of Zambia, do swear that I will faithfully and diligently discharge my duties and perform the functions in this high office, that I will uphold and maintain the Constitution and laws of Zambia, and that I will dedicate my abilities to the service and welfare of the people of Zambia, without fear, favor, or ill will. So help me God.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. And let's get straight into it. I'd like to start off, first of all, with the Alliance for Community Action Executive Director, Ms. Laura Miti. I have a very straightforward question for you as we start this discussion, and it's a question of whether or not, based on your assessment, for effective delivery of development in this country and progress, if a president, any president in Zambia, needs more time, more than the 5 years that is prescribed in each term.
Thank you, John. I'll start by saying I was a little perplexed when I heard the topic of this debate because I'm not very sure where it comes from. I'm not very sure. So I heard you say the debate has been going on. I'm not sure where it has been going on. So it is a question that I have not, before this, exercised my mind over, because I honestly do not think it is a particularly important question right now. So let me start from there. So my sense is that we have a lot of issues around the presidency, and one of the least of those is how long the president serves. So I think that we have issues in the way the presidency pans out, the way the presidents behave within these 2 terms. I think we have a problem with that. But being forced to answer your question, I would say that no, I do not think that any Zambian president that we've had so far has convinced me that the problem that they had that made them fail to deliver, or that those that delivered well, depending on how you look at it, that any of them, the problem was time. So I think that 10 years has proved to be enough time for a president to do what they need to do if they so please, if they so choose. So I would say that time is not the problem in Zambia.
When we take a look at the legal aspect of this, and I'm coming to you, Ms. Ngosa Simachela, The issue of extending the term of office of a president is obviously not a new conversation to Zambia. We've had it before, and this was obviously the last time such a conversation was had. It was in 2001. But it also is increasing more and more when the face of the debate around democracy changes across the African continent especially. But within the context of the Zambia legal framework, how much work is it, if I may put it that way, to adjust the term limit, but also the number of terms that a president should serve?
Thank you, Jonah. I just wanted to preface my comment with a similar comment to Ms. Miti. Prior to the preparations leading up to this evening, I hadn't thought much about the presidential term limit. But in considering the question that had been posed, I took the time to just look at African leadership, like a broader sort of perspective. And you'd be interested to learn that there are 10 leaders in Africa who've served over 20 years or more. And in some countries, some family dynasties have been in power for over 50 years. So when you think about it in a context like that, then you begin to think why it is important for us to sort of think about term limits. Because in a situation where we do not have them, we will be faced with situations like the ones that I've talked about, where you have presidents in office for over 20 years, families in office for over 50 years. So in terms of the legal framework, I think your question was how difficult it is to change. I wouldn't want to say difficulty per se. I want us to think about the considerations. Why would we be going there? And that brings us to the mainstay of this debate. Why then does a president want more time? And I think that's what we're all here to discuss. And for me, that's what exercised my mind. Why? Time for what? To do what exactly?
And we will get to that shortly as we expand this discussion. But Kalomo Central Member of Parliament, yes. It's very interesting for you because you are currently in office as a Member of Parliament, but also your party, the United Party for National Development, has got the current sitting president. On several occasions, I've had interviews with you and your colleagues from the United Party for National Development. And one of the things that comes out a lot of the times is this just isn't enough time for you to start asking to see progress in the country. There's so much damage that has been done to the country, and these things will take time. So as a government, do you think that you need more time?
Yes, thank you very much, and good evening. You see, the rules of a country are not made by the president. They are not made by the governing party. It is the people that will give you the rules. You are going to be CEO of this country. These are the rules we want you to rule us on. So the rules are made by the people. So as we came to power, the Zambian people gave us, here's a constitution which they made. 2 terms, 1 term, 5 years. And the president can only go maximum 2 terms. So we were given that, and we're working on it. That question, I think, should be asked to the Zambian people, not the government. Because the scenario where we think the president should be the person to make the rules is a wrong one. It is the people of Zambia that make the rules that whoever wins the presidency should govern us on. And I'm a believer that, because I was there actually when we were making this constitution amending at one point, starting from the district to the province, and we were in this hall here, where finally the jiggling was done. I think all the Zambians agreed on death penalty. We all agreed, all the provinces by then. 5-year term, we all agreed at that particular time. So as of now, I think it's wrong to ask us, because we have an agreement between the Zambian people and ourselves. They gave us the rules to govern them on. We said we'll take them. So for now, we don't have any problem. We'll work within the rules we were given. And that question should be best asked to the Zambian people.
So if I'm getting you right, you believe or you agree that this time that is allocated to different governments is enough for you to be able to deliver on the promises that you make to the people?
You see, it's like money, Joanna. Money is never enough. Money is never enough. What is important is how you plan to use that money. You can have 1 million, it's not enough. You can have 10 million, it's not enough. But what is important is how we use that money. So it's the same with us. So if we are given from the word go, it's 5 years. We must fit our plans in that time we are given to make sure that we deliver within the time we are given. And if we fail, then we are not fit to govern.
The audience seems to agree with you, Member of Parliament. Let me move to the Patriotic Front. And I would like to ask this question to the Patriotic Front because you are the immediate past government. And you were voted out by the people. And, as a result, you had to leave office. But you would have been in office if you had much more time, right? And I want to ask you if all considerations made and the plans that the Patriotic Front had, if you still feel at this time that you could have done more if you had a longer term, or if, as the Member of Parliament for Kalomo Central constituency has put it, you had your time and you wasted it.
That's right. Frankly, I would use as a point of departure the submission by Honorable Kamboni that a question of this nature must be asked to the people. And they are the ones that make a determination, or that would make a determination, whether 5 years and 2 terms is sufficient, or if there's need for an increase in the period. Like the other discussants here, I think I also was faced with a trepidation when I saw the questions that you sent to us yesterday in the night, because I'm sitting at a pedestal where I'm thinking, this debate is not even taking place. We have had this debate for a long time, and I think Zambians have been resolved. That is now to answer what Honorable Kamboni said, that even if we're going to put this question to the Zambians now on the need for us to decide whether we should increase the presidential term or not, Zambians will just refer us to what they have given in the past CRCs that have taken place. The decision to have 2 presidential limits was mooted even as far back as the days of UNIP, and UNIP resisted it. Scholars of constitutional law and politics will tell you that maybe the circumstances dictated that there shouldn't be a presidential term limit at that time. But the lessons that we drew from the experience with the UNIP government was what informed the need for us to have a presidential limit of 5 years and 2 terms complete. To answer the question whether we would have needed more time as Patriotic Front for us to deliver on the manifesto that were placed before the people when we voted into power, I would just echo what Laura Miti says. If you are determined, or if you have a program to deliver a product within a specified period, and you know when you are campaigning that the only period you're going to be given is 5 years, then you must cluster your work in such a way that within the period of 5 years that is given to you, you deliver. And if you fail, the public must decide to change you for a completely different government. For me, the very fact that after 2 terms or after 1 term, the presidency can be changed by the people is a clear demonstration that we have a very effective checks and balances system embodied within the constitutional setup that we have. So to answer the question, I do not think that this is a debate we must be having as Zambia, because we've had it for a long time, and people have already voiced their position on what the term must be.
So let me then get the inverse of this conversation. And I will build it up by starting with the narrative that has been that of this current administration, the United Party for National Development. They've complained consistently that the extent of damage in the governance system of this country by the previous government of the Patriotic Front was so bad that they didn't know where to start from. That by the time the UPND came into office, and I quote, the treasury was empty, according to the president. There's been several situations where challenges in the country have been attributed to the previous government of the Patriotic Front because of the 10 years that they served in office. Ms. Miti, based on this, do you then think that 5 years is such a long time and can result in such extensive damage, given what this current administration cites as an example for why some of their promises are not being fulfilled?
Yes, even 1 year. You know, it's so much easier to destroy than to build. So you don't need very long to destroy a country. But to comment on what the UPND says in terms of the extent to which the economy was damaged, maybe our psyche was damaged, that may be true. But I don't think, and I would hope they are not saying that the president needs 2 terms. The party can have as many terms as it likes, as long as the party convinces us that it's doing the right thing. The president, however, would have to give way to someone else that either he grooms or someone else who convinces us that they want to take the ideas of the ruling party. So to go to the question that you asked of PF, it's the same thing. The PF can come back and have 3 more terms, but President Lungu can only come back maybe for 1 term, depending on how you understand the constitution. Okay, but saying the PF needed more time does not mean it is President Lungu that must be there for 3 or 4 more terms. The same way, we expect that a president uses his party as a vehicle to advance ideas. So it's not the person. And as everybody has said, Zambians seem to be very sure that it is 2 terms and 2 terms only. And on this, I'd like maybe to reiterate what Ngosa said here, that we are in Africa, and we've got to be extremely careful. The dangers of allowing a president to have carte blanche in terms of time tends to end in extended periods, not only for the president themselves. And I think we've already even seen it here in Zambia. Sometimes you get the sense that President Kaunda wanted his son, who unfortunately died before him, Mwezi, to be president. We've had the sense that maybe left to himself, President Lungu would have wanted his daughter to take over. So the dynasty, you know, African presidents enjoy the presidency more than, it seems, more than anybody else. And I think that's the reason that Zambians put the term limit. And I'm just going to also say that I think having term limits leads to stability, political stability, which is in terms of peace, I think. When citizens know that you are driving us crazy, but hey, you've only got 3 more years, I think it kind of calms them down. Now imagine if this president that is really frustrating you as a country in a way that our presidents have a way of doing, and they have this carte blanche, they can do what they want to stay longer, I think it's a problem. So for that reason, I think it's much healthier for us as a country to keep with the 2 limits.
Mr. Simachela, there's been also a discussion against, there's been a discussion around reducing the term. And this discussion, I mean, we've talked to a couple of people building up to this debate. And one example that keeps coming up is that the US has got 4 years in which a president can serve the country, and it's just 8 years maximum that they can be president. And they always say, look at how much development they're delivering, and you know, they're in the short space of time. Do you then think that there is a need to consider reducing the amount of time that a president is voted into office at this time?
You know, John, running a country is serious business. And I just wanted to make a comment about leadership in general. I find that sometimes in Africa and in Zambia, we tend to stumble into leadership. And I don't think that should be the case. We should be deliberately, as citizens or individuals in political parties, in whatever space you are in, plotting a graph of how you are going to rise or how you are going to lead. Let's move away from this thing of waking up and finding yourself in an office. Running a country is very serious business. It should be planned. If you have a plan, no matter how much time you are given, you will achieve, or at least you will leave a footprint for someone else to come and pick up. Whether it's 4 years or 5 years, for me, I think the bigger discussion is what plans do you have for the country? What footprint do you want to leave? To the point about the current administration complaining about the 10 years of damage or whatever else, as it were, also, we were living in the same country. So we could see progressively what was happening, what was the plan for the time you took office. Because if you use the first 3 years to sort of find your way, you don't know, where you're going, obviously the next 2 years will be too short for you. So the plan for governing the country must be there before you step into office. So for me, it's about your plan, your leadership. How are you planning to take the country forward in those 5 years? Who else is coming up behind you? So that we avoid dynasties, we avoid the situation where people start to panic and then progressively begin to remove the term limits. Because that's how it starts in Africa. We start with an extension, we then remove the number of times someone can run, and then we do away with term limits altogether. So it's something that we must watch out for. Let's have a plan. Running the country is very serious business.
So I will come back to that, and that's a huge part of our discussion this evening, because Sunday, the 15th of September 2024, is in observance of the International Day of Democracy. So we will come to talk about democracy in the context of Africa, but I also want to find out from the ruling party, the United Party for National Development and the Honorable Member of Parliament for Kalomo Central Constituency. When such a conversation, is being had and there's an issue around democracy, there's an issue being raised around democracy, an issue being raised around the rule of law, an issue being raised around the freedoms of the people, does it then occur to you as a government that you also need to pay attention to, freedom of expression of the people, freedoms of the citizens, especially in the recent past, in the past 3-4 weeks, when this has been a huge talking point?
You see, maybe let me comment first and I come to that. You see, if I said today we should change 30 days of getting a salary, or maybe we put it 3 months, what would be the reaction? Or if I said students at the university should no longer be taking 5 years or 4 years to get a degree, since they don't do well when they graduate, they are not able to do much, we give them 15 years to get a degree. It's the same reaction. So why do we have the limits? It's basically to be given an opportunity to appraise the leader, to evaluate him. If he has done well, he continues for 2 terms. If he hasn't done very well, he is removed. Even when you give a lesson or a lecture, you evaluate on whether your recipients have understood by giving them an exercise. At the end, you will know whether they've understood or not. So the purpose of democracy is where power lies with the people. And where is this power? They are able to evaluate a leader. I know in May 2026, if I haven't done very well in Kalomo Central, I may not be there again, even if I want to. They will say, pack your bags, you have done enough, but we can't allow you to go because you haven't done as we expected. Then I will say, fine, take my bags, do something else. So the purpose really of the limit is to evaluate, to give people the opportunity. And that's what makes leaders work very hard, because they know they will be evaluated. So I think it has to come back to the people. coming to the freedoms, freedom is different from free boom. There is free boom and freedom. Freedom, and even when you talk of rights, I should not infringe what I do. I should not infringe into her rights. And what she does, she calls rights, should not infringe in my rights. That's what I understand. It's basically following the same laws that we have. We put the rules in this country, like Public Order Act. We put the rules that we have in the country. And we have been saying, and I must say this over the Constitution, we have said, can we sit? There's PF here. I'll give you an example. We do know that members of parliament should sit in the council. And we all agree. It's not working out very well, where the council is handling a lot of issues, but a member of parliament is not there. And we have said, there we agree. PF, any other, but that member of parliament should go to what? There are a number of things which are not contentious that we agree, but we can't change them. Public Order Act, we haven't really changed it. And so I wish you could come in with specific examples. And then I would really deliberate on where these freedom of expressions are. I think if you operate within the rules that we have, we would still have that freedom we want. And maybe we need also to look at seriously the rules that we have in the country. And some of them we're not very comfortable with. We should change them so that we can have the way we want as Zambians.
Well, MP, you say that, we should look at the rules and, how they are. But I believe that's where the issue is, because sometimes, and you've probably heard this, I personally find it a bit strange that, you cite the Public Order Act as an example, because I know for a fact that you don't think that it's a great law. So if we know that it infringes on people's rights more than it upholds the people's rights, shouldn't we then exercise wisdom in the way that this law is applied? And the wisdom being in the interest of the people of this country. And I'll cite you an example of a lone protest, for example, where someone is protesting at a freedom statue. What's the worst case scenario of what could possibly happen to this person? What is the worst thing they can possibly do? And that's where the question on people's freedoms comes in. Is there really a security risk for, what security risk does this person pose? And that's where the concerns come in with regards to freedoms of expression in the context of this democracy.
That's the danger that we have. You should not depend on my personality to run an institution, to govern the laws. No, the systems should be strong enough. It should not be because Joanna is a good person, he will allow me today. Because Laura Miti is a good person, who will allow me today. Mr. Chanda is not a good person, the same situation. This one can say no. No. We need to strengthen our systems so that it is our systems that determine what we are looking for, not individuals. But what we have, and which we have had for a long time, in some cases, it will be dependent on the person you find. The same situation you find this one, he will say yes. The same situation you find this one, he will say no. It shouldn't be like that. We need to invest in the systems. Our friends now, sometimes in some things that they do, they will simply log in a computer, the answer comes without human beings. We are now talking of, what do they call this term for, which is now where we'll be using artificial intelligence. For instance, I'll give an example. In South Africa, if you are clearing a car, there is a point where you don't see any human being. You simply put the information in the computer and it tells you in 4 days you get the answer. And exactly after 4 days, you get the answer. What am I saying? You are talking of the wisdom. And what if I don't have the wisdom, but I have the position? The law should be able to control me. So we need strong laws to avoid these discrepancies that we see. But for as long as our systems and our laws are vague, they depend on a personality to interpret them, then we are not going to be satisfied on how they are being interpreted depending on who is there. I think for me, we need to strengthen our laws so that they are straightforward. But in some cases, they are very vague. And therefore, you depend on the wisdom of the individual who is there. And that's why here, when something happens, they say, oh, the president is the one who has sent the police. It shouldn't be, it's not supposed to be like that. Under separation of powers, the law clearly, it should be not to say, oh, why hasn't he been arrested? What is the president? No, the president is very busy somewhere else. I'm beaten in Mutendere there. I expect the president, wherever he is, to come. No. The laws should be able to protect me. And if they are not followed, the muting of punishment should be for everybody. Then you say, these laws are working for us. And I'm sure my neighbor here can support him on that aspect. We need strong laws that can protect each and every individual. When we have reached that level, then we can all say we are comfortable with it.
Well, I don't know if your neighbor will support you, but I would like for her to also weigh in, because I would like for us to look at, because you said we should look at specific examples. And specific examples of, for example, several times when people have to protest, they're told that they need to get a permit. But you and I know that they don't need to get a permit. And, you know, the law is pretty clear on that. And I would like for you to also just add context to that from a legal perspective. And when she's done, then, you know, you can add context to this question that I keep asking to you before we come back to the Lukashya Member of Parliament.
Thank you, Jonah. I certainly agree with the remarks of the Honorable Member of Parliament in terms of the law having to be blind. And to steer the discussion back to presidential term limits, I wanted to give an analogy. You know, a carpenter can stay all day in a workshop, and if he doesn't have the right tools, he won't come out with anything. So it's the same with term limits. I just wanted to steer the discussion back. You can have 20 years, but if you don't have the right tools, you will still not accomplish the job. And in terms of having the right tools, the law is also very, very important. The Constitution, the President's workbook, the President's workstation is the Constitution. So I think the more useful discussion for us to have is, does this provide him, whoever he may be, the president at any material time, does it provide him with the correct tools in order to bring about development? Does he have an effective legislature, of which my two older brothers are members of? Is it a place that checks executive power? Is it a place that we can debate national issues with integrity, with clarity? Do they represent the voices of the people? Does he have an independent judiciary? You know, one that can stand up to power, only bend to the law and the Constitution and not individuals. I think in terms of term limits and tools, for me it's not really about time, but more about the tools. And I think that's what the Honorable Member of Parliament was talking about. He was talking about the law as an instrument of governance. And I think that's where we should be focusing more of our attention, rather than the time that someone has. Like I said, a carpenter, you can spend all day in your workshop and come out with nothing if you don't have the right tools.
Let's drive this discussion to the much bigger part of why we're here. And it's the fact that there is a different perspective of how some Africans are looking at democracy. And even this morning, I was reading some of the articles by some Africans that feel that democracy, and I will quote them, democracy is not a concept for Africa, they say. And they argue that when you look at the African continent, democracy is just something that we take pride in having. But there isn't much development across the African continent, and yet we pride ourselves in being democratic. And the most recent example that I personally keep seeing is the fact that democracy must be contextualized in the context of Africa. And the example given most consistently is that of Rwanda, that the president of Rwanda has been in office since early 2000s, is still in office, just won a presidential election with over 98% of the vote, and he previously had no presidential term limit. And and also pundits in the country argue that the likelihood is, if he finishes these terms of office, it's very unlikely that anyone would be in objection of him continuing. And that's where the issue of democracy in the context of Africa comes in. That if something is working, and if something is working for Africa, it must be adopted. So, Member of Parliament for Lukashya, I want to find out from you, in your assessment, the format of democracy that Africa is experiencing, that Zambia is, utilizing, and countries alike, is this our own doing?
Thank you. I was going to first respond to, there's an issue that you had raised. I know it's not part of the debate. On when there was an attempt to justify the need for extending the term for the UPND on the basis that when they came into government, they found everything had been destroyed by the Patriotic Front. I feel duty-bound just to clarify that, because when the former minister, the immediate past minister of finance heard that, Dr. Warangangu, he dated the press himself and came and made a statement that actually it's not true that the coffers were defunct when they took power. And he demonstrated that they had left sufficient funds to run government for at least two years. Now, you need to distinguish politics from constitutional making. I think our quest here is to decide whether constitutionally what we have is a working system, or it needs to be replaced by something that is much more acceptable to the Zambians. I think we all have resolved that where we are sitting right now, Zambians are so resolved that 2 terms and 5 years is what we had agreed on for a long time. I always find myself in trouble or in some kind of suspense when somebody uses the case of Rwanda as a shining example for democracy in Africa. I'll tell you the reason is because I've worked in East Africa before. I've worked in Kenya, I've worked in Uganda. I also worked in Rwanda itself when I was legal counsel for the PTA Bank. These countries must be taken for the unique presentations that they give to Africa. Rwanda is a completely different example. First, if you know, the story of Rwanda is a genocide. And then after that, it is a relationship between the 2 tribes, the Hutus and the Tutsis. That is what, from a perspective of political culture, informs how Kagame has remained in power for this long time, and there's been a correlation between the democracy that is being practiced in Rwanda and the development you are seeing in Rwanda. I think I would like us to continue using Zambia as a thriving democracy on the African continent, and I've got reasons for that. When in 1991 we felt that we had become mature enough to become a multi-party state system, we laid into place a constitution and the laws that became shining examples on the African continent. In fact, I can tell you that most of the countries, especially in the sub-region in SADC, have actually copied our legal system and replicated it in their countries. In this country, I have been so associated with legal reforms, and I've seen a spirited attempt for us to improve our legal system, at least insofar as laying down the laws are concerned. Right from the Constitution, the CPC, the Companies Act, and any other laws that are designed to spur both democracy and development. I think the biggest problem we've got as a country is this inability to develop a political culture that assimilates the legal system that we've put in place ourselves. If you talk about the Public Order Act, the troubles we have with the Public Order Act has nothing to do with the law. That piece of legislation is a fantastic piece of legislation. It's only that those who are charged with the responsibility of administering the laws do not believe in themselves, or they think they've been hired out to do the bidding for the executive for the time being. And this is not unique to the UPND, I must say. It was also the case under the MMD, it was a case under the Patriotic Front. I think we have a problem as a country where we have fantastic pieces of legislation which, if they are followed, they will actually spur our democracy and develop it, and will continue being an example to the rest of the continent. But the political culture that we are failing to develop, in fact, we are sitting at a political culture where we are in fact regressing as opposed to going forward. The misfortune we have is that those who are informed in society decide that they have nothing to do with politics. And we leave politics to people that are not well informed, who think that doing politics is parroting what those who are in power are telling you to do. We need to get to a stage where the elect and the informed in society take center stage of our politics. When we interpret our constitution, for instance, the 2016 constitution, it's one of the perfect constitutions in the region. I was the president of LAS myself when our colleagues from Malawi came here and we hosted them.
and we discussed with them how we came about that piece of legislation. And they picked the idea and went and amended their laws in Malawi, following what we had done here. But when you have political activities that are amiss with what is contained in the Constitution, this is where we find ourselves groping and going around circles without moving forward. I think that we just need to entrench ourselves in a political culture that agrees that we've got very good laws. I know that we are thinking of amending the Public Order Act, but quite frankly, even the current one is a law that, if it's properly followed by the police and others who administer it, it can actually spur development, human rights can be respected around this very piece of legislation.
Before Honorable Harry Kamboni comes in, I'd like to ask, you cite examples of countries that have similar legislation, and the examples you cite are Malawi, our neighboring country. What do Malawi and Zambia have to show for the many years of democracy in terms of improving the lives of the people that live in these countries?
That's my question. I'll tell you, I think Malawi are also beleaguered by the same problem of inability to assimilate a new political culture. The misfortune is this: we are all coming out of a one-party state system, where we thought that, president is Babazonke, the political party in power is one that you should be following. Now, when it comes to implementing a new political system that is centered around a new piece of legislation, but the mindset of the people is not assimilating, and you don't invest in shifting the paradigm, then you remain groping in the darkness. So Malawi has got the same problem. I think Zimbabwe has got the same problem. We are even slightly better because sometimes, when you make comparisons with regional countries in the region, our profile of human rights is slightly better than the other countries. Of course, we are not doing very well. We can do much, much better. But because those who are informed are beginning to increase in number, we seem to be performing even much better than our colleagues in the region. But to answer your question, I think the problem that Zambians face is very similar to the one that Malawians face in terms of not wanting to assimilate to a new political culture that will allow you to ensure that the laws that you put in place are the ones that guide society relationships as opposed to politics itself.
Ms. Laura Miti, you wanted to weigh in?
I must say I really like what the MP for Lukashya has said, and I think it's something that deserves to be re-emphasized, which is that we have, whether we like it or not, a thriving democracy, and it is one we should build on. The fact that ultimately who enters State House is in the hands of Zambians is not something that we should take lightly. I get your question on what that democracy has brought us. So for me, my sense is our biggest problem, in fact, our greatest tragedy is that we have not developed this country for the majority poor. We have not developed the country for people in the rural areas, and the people in the rural areas are living lives that are essentially in the Stone Age. Our wealth does not translate to improved lives. So the level of poverty that Zambians live in is unjustified. That does not mean we should then knock democracy. So the fact that we need to work on translating our wealth to improved lives for the people does not mean we want a dictatorship. And I also agree with the Member of Parliament that please do not use Rwanda as a good example. If I was in Rwanda, I'd be dead. And I'd rather be alive, if you see what I mean. So,
maybe in the context of, Rwanda is used as an argument largely in the context of the improvement of its economy. It's literally one of the fastest growing economies on the African continent.
That's exactly what I'm saying is you don't have to give up democracy to get development. So what President Kagame has done is be a dictator who follows his enemies to the ends of the earth and they die. We know that, everybody knows that. So the kind of life that we have in Zambia, where essentially, yes, we have a problem, we have governments that keep shrinking the space in which citizens can express themselves. But when we compare that to so-called thriving Rwanda, we have freedom of speech. Essentially, we are a free people. You can have both. We don't have to say our democracy is not working because our economics or our development is not working. And I totally agree with everybody here who said we need our politicians to advance the good of the country, to make our democracy work. But our democracy, I think, on this continent does better than most. And what we need to do is make sure that we become more constitutional, abide by our own laws, stop worshipping our leaders, stop acting like the president is a small god. All these things are a problem. And these are not really legal problems. They're a culture that we hold. So I would say that we need to entrench our democracy, ensure that Zambians across board still hold dear the fact of who they vote for, how they vote for. And then we need to make that democracy translate to improved lives. But envying a dictatorship is not my kind of thing. So I do not envy Rwanda at all, because it is a very repressed country. And I know that I cannot survive in a repressed country.
We'll come back to talking about this, but would like to take a break. We've got a live audience here that is joining us, and we'll give this audience an opportunity to weigh in, give a comment, or ask questions to the panel that we have live here. But for now, we'll take a break.
Don't worry about load shedding, because with Diamond Media, we've got you covered. No Malite, it's all right. We caught up with EFZ Executive Director, Bishop Andrew Mwenda.
Bishop, I have the pleasure of handing you over this little gadget.
Thank you so much.
I know with power problems, it may be an issue to prepare sermons and really to get connected. So courtesy of Diamond Media, we're gifting you this power bank, and let the congregants and all the church members know that with no Malite, it's all right with Diamond Media.
You can always communicate even when there is no power.
Yeah.
You can make a difference. Communication makes a difference. Remember that in Genesis 11 it says he confused them. He confused their language. If you want to confuse people, confuse their language.
And just as he has empowered us with the gospel, we've empowered him with the power bank. You can also be like Bishop Mwenda by simply subscribing to our YouTube channel.
Okay, guys, business, what do we have in business today?
Yes, so the private creditors are expected to be signing NDAs today, and we also have the BNB that's coming up.
That's good, that's good. I want a community angle on that. Can we get a community angle? Victoria, yes?
There's a family in Tendele willing to give a comment on that.
Done deal. Let's get that. Kotso, anything on health?
So there is a ministerial statement on COVID-19 cases that is scheduled for tomorrow. We can build up on that.
That's good. I need you to add previous statistics to that report. We need substance on that story. Somebody, please tell me what's going on in Zimbabwe.
So presidential nominations done, campaigns underway, and we also have a few correspondences from Botswana and Namibia.
I want Malawi on that list. Sports, give us something.
Well, the group stage of the FIFA Women's World Cup is almost concluding, and the Zambian FA is expected to issue a statement on that.
That's awesome, guys. Let's get to work.
Guys, tip off. Street vendors are protesting in town.
Victoria, George, I need you guys to get on that story now. Everybody else, let's get background information and give an update. Breaking news, live.
We are the leaders in breaking news. Diamond Media. DSTV channel 271 and GoTV channel 20.
Wow promo! Great prizes to be won from 1xBet. Cash prizes. iPhone 14 Pro. 100 bonus points. Wow. Use promo code to get welcome bonus.
Wow. Son, well, I'm sure life seems hard for you right now. When you read these words, it means that you're at the age me and your mother were when we moved to Lusaka. I remember how many times your mom and I were enjoying. We always found time to comfort each other after a long day. For us, home was about supporting each other. All this to tell you and your wife, it's gonna be fine.
Small moments of happiness do have a lot of meaning when they remind us of where we come from. Boom. Never forget home.
Umupamapamo watulile ngoma. Consistency enables one to achieve his or her goals. But that responsibility comes with its own challenges.
When that time of the month comes, it's never easy, but I must be ready.
Mukunkala kwangu pano padera, nosebenzera bana. Masiku yanangu, yomvwika bwino. Lomba yakini, umvwika lini bwino.
They say you look after wealth, but knowledge looks after you.
In all my years, as a wife and as a mother,
something always had my back in painful times.
For fevers, headaches, muscle aches, and backaches, the recommendation is
Panadol.
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 Panadol. Pharmanova. Saving lives since 1980.
Greatness is everywhere. It's in the places you go, the people you meet, the things you do. Introducing Shaka soft drinks, a unique, refreshing drink that celebrates greatness. Shaka, celebrate greatness.
Pascal's showing his boss the efficient new technology they've installed. She is pleased, but now she's asking, why is that still there? Pascal explains that the wells can store many, many messages. The boss is not so pleased anymore. If you haven't upgraded your contact center yet, it's time to get business done better with MTN Business.
Hey kids! Mommy, did you get them? Sweetheart, of course I did. Come on, let's wrap it up nicely before Grandpa gets here. Grandpa!
Grandpa, we have a gift for you. What is it, my dear?
It's brown.
Brown.
It's crunchy. And it has your favorite oat. Delicious.
I like it already.
What favorite, Grandpa?
Choc Melts, my favorite.
Introducing Chelsea Choc Melts, the delicious melt-in-your-mouth chocolate cream oat biscuits.
Welcome back to this live broadcast. We're broadcasting to you live from the Mulungusha International Conference Center here in Lusaka. You're watching us from across the country, and we appreciate you weighing in on the issues that we're discussing here. This month hosts the International Day of Democracy, which falls on the 15th of September 2024, which is this Sunday, and we're having a series of discussions relating to Zambia's democracy, but also across the African continent. And today, we're having such a public debate with an audience live and our panel here. I did say before the break that we would be talking also to the audience, and shortly, I'll be going to the audience to ask you to weigh in on some of your questions that you have for our panel. And I understand that State Council Abiu Dishonga will be the first to make a contribution and ask a question, and then after that we'll move on to Edgar Silwimba. But before we get to that, I'd like to come to you, Ms. Ngosa Simachela, and it's us picking up from where we were before the break and looking at democracy on the African continent. And I specifically want you to weigh in on this because you started off by giving an example of what instability would look like in Africa, if presidents go unchecked, if they have an extended time, if there's any tinkering around the presidential term and the limit that comes with it. But there's also another school of thought, and it's that democracy in its design, especially on the African continent, can be argued to be a good thing for the people, but at the same time be used to legitimize oppression of the people by suggesting that it is their will, because democracy is the will of the people, and the few elite use that as leverage for them to, continue ruling or going against the will of the people and say that it is democracy. And in that context, do you think that democracy is failing people on this continent in Africa?
No, I don't think that democracy is failing people. My honest view is that people fail people. Democracy is only but a tool. So it's very important, I think, for us to begin to think about the people using the tool. We need to be very, very critical, I think, about office bearers, about people that we let lead the country, because therein lies the problem. The concept of democracy and leadership itself are not problems, but only people hurt their own citizens. So that's where I think the critical thinking needs to come in. But otherwise, democracy in and of itself is something that we should guard very, very preciously. Because like Ms. Miti was saying, it's better to be here where I can express myself. I can sit in a fora like this and not worry about my journey back home, whether it will be taken as, it won't be well taken by the powers that be. So let's focus more on the caliber of people that we are letting in office and not democracy per se. And I liked what my former last president and now MP was saying, talking about political culture. We need to socialize ourselves a certain way. And my appeal, I think, is for the young people to jump right in. And I think they saw their power in the 2021 elections. Let's not leave politics and say it's not for me. Let's, us who are upright, the citizens of this country, let's participate so that democracy can be a tool for development.
There's another school of thought, and I'll still dwell on that line of thought, that there are people that also argue that, when you look at the general population of Zambia and the general population of Africa also, is that there's a lot of uneducated people. And uneducated people who lack exposure because of things like underdevelopment of the outskirts of countries. It's almost a consistent pattern. And they sometimes don't make informed decisions. And do you think that then democracy is used, once again, to legitimize leaders because people don't fully understand the extent of what they're deciding? They don't fully understand what democracy itself is. And so it is used in reverse to legitimize leaders that are potentially oppressive.
No, I hear you on that point, but I think my view still remains. There is a way in which that we can reach the uneducated, as you would put them. There's work that can be done in those communities to just simplify the processes and the law. That's all that is required. I think people need the very basic understanding, because even documents like the Constitution, even documents like laws, they need to get to a point where even my grandmother in Chinsali, she can understand the document is written in a very plain language that she can understand. She can grasp the very concepts of what she's doing. And at least a vote, everyone understands the power of a vote. No matter how educated they are, they know that my vote is to be protected. It is my choice of a leader. So I think there are ways in which we can reach our communities, our rural areas, so that we don't use them as a reason to justify the stay, like you were saying, of dictators in office and claim that it's the will of the people. So we need to be a little bit more active as a citizenry.
MP, you wanted to weigh in before Ms. Miti comes in. Yeah.
Yeah, what I wanted to come in was to see, if you look at how democrats came in Zambia, we only changed a few things. How to vote, the term of the president, we went ahead. The rules were one party, and then we called what we are doing democracy. So the rules we went with in a democratic state were not compatible to democracy. And then we had a problem. Then we begin to go back. Oh, we didn't change this. We need to change. Even now, we are still arguing on the laws. We hurriedly introduced democracy without looking at the laws that would actually support the democracy that we were claiming to be. And as a result, it delayed in bringing the actual results we need. The term uneducated, who is educated and who is a learned person? You can be learned but not educated. You can have a degree and you're not able to do what your degree entails with a merit or distinction, then you are learned, not educated. You may not have gone to school, you can still have education. So really, I think it's not a question of education, it's a question again of rules and how we change these things fast without really carrying in a holistic manner so that what we take is complete and we'll be able to deliver. So what we did was like, you have a car, a Corolla, and you bring tires for a tractor. A Corolla will not move well. Everything must be compatible to what you are making. And this is why our democracy really delayed in bringing in the intended results. I thought I should comment on that.
Isn't that kind of similar to the argument of making democracy work in the context of different countries in Africa? Isn't that quite similar with what we hear around democracy in the context of Africa? Yes, you would like to weigh in.
Yeah, well, you see, first, like others have said, Zambia in the region is the only country that has not only changed presidents, but even the parties. In some countries, it's difficult to remove a party. Since independence, they have had the same party, but changed presidents within the party. But Zambia is a country where people have changed presidents and even political parties. So really our democracy somewhere is an envy of other countries, but it's not still where it is supposed to be. And we must put it in the context where we are. Our laws should solve the problems that we have. We have by-elections, we have MPs that can be fired anyhow because the laws allow, the laws are weak. Somebody can just, so all these need to be stretched up so that the laws really can protect what is good. If you leave politicians they will abuse the law if it's loose. I remember when President Manawasa was here, he was the first one to appoint as a minister a member of parliament who did not come from his political party. And we all remained shocked as a country. Is this possible? Do we have any law? Only to find there was no law. In Zambia, there is no law if a councillor is arrested. There is no law that stops him to come back to work. He can be arrested for 50 years. If his term is still there, he'll come and work again. So there's still a lot of areas where we need to put in the laws so that we can have the democracy we cherish. For democracy to thrive, to deliver, we need it to be supported by the laws.
MP, you would like to weigh in?
Just sharing similar points. Zambia has no option but to remain a democracy. You can imagine this is a collection of about 72 or 73 tribes. in the absence of democracy, what you basically are going to have are tribal gangs, which unfortunately exist in some of the African countries. If you go to South Sudan, if you now go to Libya, what you find there is not democracy, but you find tribes that fight for the reins of power, and they exchange everything, including war, to displace those that that are in power and put themselves in power. You had made a statement that sometimes people take advantage of others to entrench what looks like a democracy, but it's unique only to them. I want to argue that if you do such a thing, you are actually not being democratic, because democracy is ruled by the people. You always have to take people on board, and this is why I think the point that was made by Ms. Miti is very clear. I want to give an example of my constituency. My constituency is largely an agrarian constituency, and it's made up mainly of villagers who, if you want to classify them, you would say they are the ones who are maybe least educated. But mark my words, these people are very wise. When it comes to exercising political wisdom, you can't compare them even to people that are even educated. So what we need to accept is that sometimes those of us who have the privilege of being leaders, we must make sure that in entrenching our democratic ideals in the country, we take on board even those that are disadvantaged, which is why a democratic system that we must entrench in this country is one that seeks to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor, seeks to bridge the gap between the rural and urban communities. And a political system that you put in place, if it works like that, then you are going to achieve the democratic ideals that you set for yourselves. But any system that seeks to separate certain classes of citizens and others are left behind is not democratic in my assessment.
Ms. Miti, you wanted to weigh in before we come to the audience.
Okay. I'm always fascinated with the idea that the Zambian and so-called uneducated and maybe marginalized people are not wise, are not aware of democracy, or they can be abused by democracy. The majority of Zambians are the uneducated, or at least marginalized, less informed. They are the ones that have changed presidents. They are the ones that queued up in 2021, queued up in 2011. It's not us, it's them. So they are very astute. Whatever else they are not. I think what Zambians are poor at is demanding what this president calls the dividends of democracy. So once they vote people into power, they begin to worship them. So the problem in Zambia is in between elections. And that is something the organization I work for, Alliance for Community Action, focuses on. That we need to change the psyche of the less educated and maybe especially the rural voters, like the MP for Lukashya is talking about. They are the ones who need to learn to demand the rights of their citizenship, which is not political, but economic and social.
But doesn't that still then classify them as, classifies them as having that problem because of them being uneducated?
No, but it's all of us. You see, we in towns and in the urban areas, it's not because we are particularly vocal that we get anything. It's just because the people who lead us also live in town. So when the PF was decorating Lusaka, it wasn't for us. It was for themselves, if you see what I mean. So we, the so-called educated, do not demand accountability or demand development any more than the so-called less educated. So I think as a country we need to maybe stop insulting the people who have actually carried this democracy for us. They are the ones who have stood and voted. As for democracy, legitimizing, should I say, dictators and that kind of thing, again, I think we need to bring that question to Zambia. I think that would be true, for example, of the last elections in Zimbabwe. You get the sense that all those elections did was give President Mnangagwa 5 more years to be a little bit more of a dictator and harass his people. But here, our democracy has not legitimized anyone. We've used our democracy in the way it's supposed to be. Change people. The sitting government now is scared. And every government here is scared of the people. There are very few countries in which you will find a sitting government actually scared of a coming election, because they know that it's Zambians who can stand up and make a change or decides to reward you with another term. And as long as we consider that, we need to understand that, I'll repeat, our problem here is not democracy. Democracy is actually working for this country, but it is what that democracy does for the people in the long run. But I agree with what the MP said. Remove the ability of Zambians to vote, remove the ability of Zambians to speak up, and what kind of country is this? So I don't think in Zambia especially, our democracy or our elections are used to legitimize those that would like to hurt the people.
All right, let's get to the audience and hear what they have to say in terms of their contributions this evening. And we'll start with Mr. Abu Dishonga, who is State Counsel, and he's also just going to weigh in. He is also a former Law Association of Zambia president, and he's a legal practitioner. I don't know where he's sitting. If we could hand the mic to him so that he can make the contribution.
Thank you so much. Would you like me to stand? Thank you so much. I would like, first of all, to just acknowledge the speakers today and their candid addresses on issues that are important for the country. I have a comment and a semi-question. The comment is on the issue to do with the topic of changing the presidential term. My view, if something isn't broken, there's no need to fix it. There's nothing wrong with the presidential term being limited. Constitutionalism, for me, is about limiting, controlling the exercise of political power. We cannot regress to the Stone Age and start talking about extending the presidential term. I, for one, don't support it. I agree with Honorable Chisanga to the extent that my reading of the Constitutional Review Commissions shows that the Zambian people, whether it's Mvunga, whether it's Mwanakatwe, whether it's Mungomba Constitution, they spoke loudly with one voice. We want limitations. It shouldn't be more than 2 5-year terms. So this issue, I think I would be happier if it died and never resurrected. My comment is on the Public Order Act. I agree that the problem with the Public Order Act, my view, is that it's at the point of implementation. When you read the act, it talks about notification. You want to have a public gathering, you notify the police. But what happens in reality is that the police do something else, and that notification is now changed into permission. And it has been consistently used as a weapon, and a bad one at that. The honorable member from PF is here. When PF was in power, I was the last 2 years president of LAS, and I quarreled with Honorable Chisanga because I didn't like the implementation of the Public Order Act by the police. We crossed over. I was expecting something different. Nothing has changed. So my question, why are we failing to do something about this? If we know that the problem is with the implementation and those supervising or superintending over this law are known, why are we failing to remove them? Why are we failing to do something about this? It really hurts me because the rights of citizens is being thwarted. Article 21 of the Constitution speaks about freedoms, assembly. But how we are implementing the Public Order Act, for me, is a huge problem. And I would like to hear, maybe someone has some reasons. Why are we failing to remove people who are flouting the implementation as we know it? I'll stop there. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for weighing in and asking that question. So we'll get that question answered, and then we'll move on to the next question. We'll start from my right, and then we'll go all the way to the left.
Thank you, Mr. Shonga. I would say the answer is kind of simple or maybe simplistic. The reason why we are failing to change, amend, or properly implement the Public Order Act is for the question we probably should have been talking about here, which is not, should we extend the terms of president? It's moot. You know, that is not a conversation that anybody is going to entertain. It is, what should we do about the presidency? What should we do about the powers of the president? You see, our constitution makes our president God. So it makes adult men and women act like, sorry. Okay, let me not. You know, they are in office and worshipping at the altar of the presidency because the president can fire anybody, hire anybody. So the IG starts acting in ways that he obviously knows are unprofessional. The police are acting unprofessionally. The Minister of Home Affairs is acting unprofessionally. All of them, as soon as they leave that office, ask them the question about the POA. They suddenly become wise. So like you've heard the PF people now, very wise. You know, some of them. And yet you start asking yourself, isn't this the same person who was acting really crazy not too long ago? But now when they start talking about democracy, constitutionalism, ni muntu winangu, you understand? Then they feared the sitting president. Now it's the turn of UPND people. They fear President Hichilema because he can fire them. And so unless we control the powers of the president, his ability or her ability to hire, to fire, if we need a real separation of the arms of government. We need a judiciary that is funded directly from the fiscus. The central government has nothing to say about it. We need a chief justice that is not appointed by the president. We need judges that are appointed within that judicial service. We need a speaker elected by the legislature. Then we need the president to exercise his powers as the executive. Then we'll have a POA or every other law that works. But right now, IG Musamba's greatest in his motivation is to please President Hichilema. And I think he believes that President Hichilema wants him to arrest all his critics. Therefore,
well, I guess the question is, MP Chisanga, what happens, to the wisdom when governments are in office? What happens to it?
Firstly, you must have done justice to, in the introduction of my colleague Abiudi Shonga. He actually was not only former last president, he was also Solicitor General and Attorney General of the Republic of Zambia. And some of these fantastic pieces of legislation were actually passed under his guard. I will answer this as a politician. I will be forgiven by the former last president who's here. I think she will answer it as a legal practitioner. But I think for me, the biggest problem we've got with the implementation of the Public Order Act is actually what in politics they call the trappings of power. It does look like a piece of legislation that is very helpful to a government which is in power at any given time. If I will recall, when we were campaigning as Patriotic Front under Michael Sata, one of the things he used to scream loudest was that he was going to abolish the Public Order Act because people are going to be allowed to enjoy their freedoms, etc., etc. But immediately we got into power, he made a statement which startled even me, who was a member of Patriotic Front. He actually said at State House, this is a very fantastic piece of legislation. We have got to have some kind of control of how the public can be gathering, etc., etc. But in the fight that then ensued, even within the Patriotic Front itself, as one of those advocates who had wanted to ensure that we amend the Public Order Act, because I believe that if we're going to call ourselves a thriving democracy, we should have a piece of legislation that allows for people to freely assemble and exercise their rights as enshrined in the Constitution. In fact, if you see that this problem is not unique only to PF or I think even UPND currently, the MMD had the biggest problem with the Public Order Act. There was one time when the Public Order Act itself was found to be null and void because it violated the Constitution, both in the High Court and in the Supreme Court, the case I think of Mulundika. The Vice President then, General Mianda, moved Parliament to enact an amendment to public order to reintroduce a control mechanism that had the Supreme Court that said it should not be in the Public Order Act. I actually had the last laugh with General Mianda because when we were in Patriotic Front as government, I was on the Commission of Inquiry that was appointed by Michael Sata, and we were considering, among other things, the amendment to the Public Order Act. General Mianda came to plead with us to ensure that we amend the Public Order Act. And I reminded him, but sir, you are the one who was the vice president when this act was nullified by the Supreme Court. Why now have you changed? Because now he's in the opposition. So it is true that when you are sitting in government, the Public Order Act currently looks like a tool you can use to control the public. But it comes knocking on your door immediately you come out of power. But I must say, Dingy, that the challenge now is with the UPND. Because in the efforts that we as Patriotic Front had put together, we'd actually even proposed an amendment to the Public Order Act, and we took it to Parliament, and we had 2 readings of that statute. What came into our way was Bill 10, because the thinking around the amendment was at first, we must deal with Bill 10, and then we come back and deal with the Public Order Act and Access to Information Bill. So the statutes that we left in the Office of Attorney General when we were voted out of power, there's a Public Gatherings Act bill which is almost ready for implementation or for enactment, and the Access to Information Bill which is also ready for enactment. The challenge I think is for my colleague Mr. Kamboni, possibly can explain why now there's going to be this delay in implementing those statutes. But the trappings of power are the major problem when it comes to implementing these statutes that are very fundamental to democracy.
We must quickly wrap up this question, why we're failing, and then so we'll quickly hear from you, and then we can get back to
Well, I've asked my party to say it's in the process. I think one time we came. Yes, I have to present my.
What is in the process, MP?
No. There was a time when we actually caucused at Parliament to look at the final submissions. I'm talking of the Public Order Act. But then let me come to the same lawyers. They are saying this is a fantastic piece of law. Now, the problem comes when you go to notify the police, from my experience. So first of all, why do you go to notify the police that you are gathering? The police take it, you need their security. And immediately you notify them, they say, oh, we can't come to send it. So, we are not allowing it to gather. Oh no, you need to notify us 7 days in advance. They have those, are we together here? So the first question I'm asking, if let's assume we are not notifying the police, would we have the problem that we have? And so this Public Order Act needs to be looked at. You can't have something that is fantastic and so confusing. Why am I saying so? Usually the police will say, one, we don't have enough policemen to come and offer protection. So the policemen we have are few. So we are not coming, we can't give you. Now it becomes a permit when it's supposed to be notified. But then, even notification, why should you notify me? You see? For me already, by bringing notification, it brings in other issues that those you are notifying can possibly chip in. And that's why I'm still saying that piece of law should still be looked into so that it's straightforward. No arguments, no saying, since I don't have what, you should have notified me 30 days in advance, 7 days, all that kind of stuff. And so you literally land yourself in the hands of the police, and they will treat you the way they like. Well, they will say, you notified us late, we don't have enough manpower, and then you're not given the permission.
All right. Let me get 2 more questions, and then we can get towards wrapping up. We've got Edgar Silwimba, who's going to ask a question. Let's kindly have, where's Edgar? Edgar is over here.
Good evening, panelists, and good evening, comrades. First, I must say this is a very interesting conversation. We found it, and it has resurfaced. But above all, my submission, first of all, is on the presidential term limit. I don't agree that we need to extend, but I also have issues to why I feel we are still stagnant with development. Many of the times that when we have change of government like we had in 2021, the power of the incumbency, and which lies in the hands of Comrade Hakainde Hichilema today, entails that he has the power to hire and fire. So that in itself means that continuity becomes a challenge with regards to development. Projects which PF left, which actually mean well, and which mean well for the Zambians, some of them have not been continued because of politics. But had we had stronger institutions, stronger laws that govern, it would entail that even if you are elected today, you still have to continue with the development trajectory which was left. There are roads in Chongwe, I know very well there's a road in Chongwe, which has been abandoned, was abandoned by the previous administration, but was a project which was actually kick-started by President Michael Sata, may he so rest in peace. And up to today, it's a white elephant, all because we don't have stronger institutions to do what, to champion continuity. And also, I want to stress the fact that the challenges of democratization in Africa lies in the hands of the powers of incumbency. The power of incumbency is a recipe for destruction in most of the African states. The change of government entails that projects change, office bearers change, everyone changes. So the 2 years of UPND in power meant that they needed to start from zero because other office bearers were new and had to master the art of leadership or public administration. So for me, my submission this evening, the people of Zambia, is that we need to change issues with regards to the powers of incumbency. The president should be a servant, but as it stands now, he has the power to hire and fire. The more reason why Comrade Miti says, as it stands today, the IG is scared of the president. Whatever he's going to do is to appease the president.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for your contribution. We've got Clarence Musenda.
Okay, thank you. So my question is directed to the Member of Parliament for Kalomo. Honorable Member, why is it that your party at the time at which it was in opposition had a lot of solutions around economic reforms but has failed to implement majority of those solutions that it had at that particular time?
All right, thank you so much. We'll get to the conclusion of our debate. And as you respond to these questions that have been asked, I will also ask a question which will be your concluding remarks. A resounding no from the panel, and I'm guessing a resounding no from the audience if the president needs more time, right? Based on this, the question that now begs an answer, if the time is right, if the rules are right, what is wrong with delivering development for the people of this country? And this will be our final question. We'll start with the Lukashya Member of Parliament. There were two contributions made, one contribution and one question. I don't think that's your question. No. And I also asked a question.
In fairness, I won't answer that question. But I think what we need to agree is that the country is agreeable on what the term must be, 5 years and 2 terms. It's a done deal. What we must endeavor to develop as a nation is a political culture, that actually tries to entrench strength of institutions. Somebody has just made a point. If the president today can wake up and fire 6 permanent secretaries, then you have a problem. If a political party can come in and say we're going to come with our own permanent secretaries, and you remove people that have had, that have been milled through the system to become permanent secretaries, then you have a problem. So our answer to the problems that we are facing is not extending the term, but it is developing a new political culture where politicians who come will respect the institutions of government, especially those that are responsible for administering the rule of law and other social services, and that there'll be too little cadreism in politics as compared to allowing professional civil service to actually function. A professional civil service actually would help a political party to deliver development. But the thinking around, by politicians around, is that a civil service which is fined is so aligned to the previous political party that they need to be removed completely and replaced by people who are otherwise not experienced. So we need to move on from that culture and allow a system where professional civil servants are allowed to function together with politicians.
Thank you so much for your contribution. Honorable Member of Parliament for Kalomo Central, Harry Kamboni, you may proceed.
Yeah, well, he's asking on promises. You see, we all promise. I'm married. Surely, I promised my wife something. I don't remember fully what she promised me, but I promised her something. And there's nothing wrong in having a manifesto. And even this building, when you're building a building, you can do a bill of quantity. There are very few buildings that will fit 100%. But what is important is, as we are putting that building, the challenges that you face at that particular time, you must solve them. You can actually marry today, you promise promises of roses, and suddenly something nasty happens just a day after marriage. You still have to continue. Now, yes, we made promises. Some have been fulfilled. You know, it's like you get a car that was possibly on the stones, and then you say, may I fix it? There's nothing wrong in having that wheel. So you fix in the engine, you discover the exhaust also had hose, it drops. Then somebody says, you were saying you fix it. You fix the exhaust, you discover the bearings are also giving problems. You don't give up until you. Now, if you look at here, surely the UPND government has tried in some areas. No doubt about it.
All right, I know that you would spend a lot of time on this, but I need you to answer my question on how, we're going to make this work very quickly.
You said, what is wrong with the delivering development to the country? Yeah, because for development to take place, you need to set up the environment. The environment must be correct. The foundation, even a building, for it to go up must be correct. And what we are doing now is basically to make this environment conducive, trying to fix this, to fix that before the car can take off. So we are fixing this, fixing that, and once we have finished fixing all this, you will see the car. Development requires time, it takes time, but you must work towards it. That's what is very important.
All right. Let's hear from Ms. Ngosa Simachela. If the president doesn't need more time, then why is delivery of development such a problem across the African continent?
We are definitely agreed that he doesn't need more time. But I think I made this submission earlier. What he needs as a carpenter, better tools. And I think in my view, the power is concentrated too much in the executive. And we're not doing enough to ensure that there are those checks and balances. Our legislature needs to be strengthened. Our judiciary needs to be strengthened. That is where the problem is. It is not with time, but with the tools. And the tools include human resource. The human resource, who are the president's men? Who are members of his cabinet? Who are his advisors? Are we as citizens demanding accountability? Like Ms. Miti was saying earlier, after we go to the ballot box, do we wait the next 5 years again to go back to the ballot box? Why don't we ask the relevant questions in between that term of office? So the tools are not right. The human resource most times is a challenge. And we have emasculated, like Honorable Chisanga was saying, we've emasculated the civil service. And that's a very, very big way of losing development in the country, because every time you are starting again. So the tools need to be right as well. Thank you.
Ms. Laura Miti, finally, as we conclude, what needs to be done to make this work?
I think I agree with my co-panelists. We need an independent and professional civil service. If only we could have civil servants who go to work in order to work as technocrats and implement projects, I think a lot would change. Right now we have a very politicized civil service, and the biggest problem we have is PSs. For example, for me, one of my biggest unhappinesses with this current administration or the current president is the way in which PSs were appointed. I did not expect that PSs would be jettisoned in from outside, and I thought for a change maybe we would have PSs that have worked in the civil service and come up. So now when you have PSs that are scared every time there's an election, then they become political, because from now up to 2026 they stop working. They are trying to get this government elected because they don't know what happens if the government changes. So we have a big problem with that. But I think even a bigger problem is we, the people of Zambia. I think the fact that most Zambians just do not understand a simple fact, that this country is rich and that the money is theirs. There's a sense in which we look at politicians as kindly benefactors. So UPND has done this for us, PF has done this for us. I think when Zambians begin to understand that the money that develops this country and the decisions that are made should be for them, something would change. So Zambians need to know the money is theirs and be as strong about the use of that money, about accountability, as they are on the day of the vote.
Thank you so much. This is in Norway a constitution review commission, and it is in Norway a treaty, but we can agree that there seems to be a consensus that it is a resounding no to increasing time of a president in office. We cannot guarantee that this conversation will not happen anywhere else, but for now, this is where we leave it. My name is Dingindaba Jonah Buyoya, and this has been this month's Public Debate. Good evening.